The girl they said was too short to model ended up changing what a model looks like.
I think my look is quite different, you know what I mean? And I'm not as tall as the rest of the models, so I never would have thought that, you know, I could be modeling with the rest of these, like, you know.
And then carried that power straight to Hollywood. Devon Aoki didn't just rule runways. She raced into Too Fast, Too Furious and turned a pink car into a pop culture legend. But before that, she changed the rules forever. She walked into an industry built on inches and symmetry and reshaping it without ever raising her voice. At barely 5'5", she closed Chanel's couture show in a cape and pink mohawk, moving like she'd been cast by fate, not by height. One walk was enough to shift the conversation from perfection to presence. She didn't just fit the clothes, she made them look alive. Decades later, her fingerprints are still everywhere on runways, in music videos, even in a blockbuster franchise. She's been a Chanel bride, a street-style blueprint, and the face designers still chase but never quite catch. What happened between a punk concert discovery and a place in fashion history isn't just a career story. It's a transformation that changed how beauty itself is defined. But before she became the reference everyone copied, she was just a teenager who didn't belong anywhere fashion cared to look. In the late 90s, fashion was restless. The era of glossy perfection was collapsing under its own weight. The supermodels of the early decade had ruled like deities, but their shine was beginning to look staged. Grunge had come and gone, leaving behind a craving for something that felt honest. Runways wanted rebellion, but they didn't know what real rebellion looked like until Devon Aoki walked in. She was 13, backstage at a punk concert in New York, a Rancid show, of all places, when someone noticed her. No agencies, no glossy headshots, just a girl who looked like she belonged to the world outside fashion's walls. That was exactly what the industry was missing. Within weeks, she was shooting for Interview magazine. Kate Moss, already a legend, saw something familiar in her and personally introduced her to Storm management. She wasn't trying to fit in, she was what fashion had been looking for. She didn't have to pretend to be cool because she lived it every day.
I'm 11th grader. For now, fashion is cool and school is cool, and, you know, I'm happy with the whole thing.
Fashion didn't discover Devon Aoki. It needed her. She was the spark that reminded the industry that beauty could come from chaos, that edge wasn't something you could style, it had to be real. But the moment she arrived, the system built to exclude her started to panic. The same industry that claimed to crave originality still measured worth in inches and silhouettes. Devon was about to prove that numbers couldn't define impact, and that presence could outweigh perfection. The rules were clear. Tall, thin, identical. If you didn't hit at least 5'9", you didn't even get in the room. Devon Aoki stood barely 5'5". Every chart, every measurement said she didn't belong. She once said, "I'm too small and my look's pretty weird. I don't fit the status quo." She was right. And that's exactly why Karl Lagerfeld took notice. When he met her, the reaction wasn't hesitation, it was inspiration. He didn't just cast her, he built around her. Within a year, she closed Chanel's couture show as the bride, the final and most sacred moment of any runway. That single walk shattered the old blueprint. Suddenly, the girl who wasn't supposed to fit in became the one everyone wanted to resemble. Her presence challenged every assumption the industry held. The angles of her face, her mixed Japanese, German, and English heritage, her height, all the things they said would limit her, became her signature. She was proof that memorability mattered more than measurement. When the new millennium began, Devon Aoki wasn't following fashion, she was defining it. The Y2K aesthetic that dominates runways and TikTok feeds today didn't appear out of nowhere. It came straight from her wardrobe. She turned low-rise jeans, tiny tanks, and baby tees into armor. Her proportions rewrote the rules of silhouette. She could look soft and dangerous at the same time, an impossible combination that no stylist could engineer. Those early 2000s campaigns by Moschino, Versace, Balenciaga were more than editorials. They were blueprints. The way the clothes sat on her body, the way she carried herself, became the language of an era. Then came Too Fast, Too Furious. Devon played Suki, the pink leather-wearing street racer who stole every scene.
When I got here, I didn't have a license. I had never actually driven before. I had driven a golf cart around, of course, but that was the extent of my driving experience. It was crazy because when I got here, they're like, "So, you know how to drive, this will be easy," and I was like, Well,
Millions who'd never opened Vogue suddenly knew her face. The movie immortalized her Y2K style in pop culture's memory. 2 decades later, that same look of low-rise pants, glossy lips, candy colors echoes everywhere from Instagram to luxury runways.
You know, you look at her in the film and you believe like she's a street racer. You know, as pretty and cute as she is, it's phenomenal to see her face. You know, she's just like, you know, she's going for hers. You know, she's hanging with the dudes.
yes!
Fashion didn't just reference the early 2000s, it referenced her. The attitude, the confidence, the mix of innocence and edge that was Devon's handwriting all over the decade. That kind of influence doesn't fade, it evolves. Designers stopped seeing her as someone who wore their ideas and started seeing her as someone who helped create them. Devon Aoki never behaved like a mannequin waiting to be dressed. She walked into every room like an equal, a collaborator. That's why Jeremy Scott called her his baby muse forever. He first cast her when she was still a teenager, long before his designs became fixtures on red carpets. Their connection wasn't just professional, it was creative chemistry. When she returned to his Moschino runway in Los Angeles in 2016 after 7 quiet years, the crowd's reaction said everything. It wasn't nostalgia, it was recognition. The designer and his muse had reunited and fashion felt whole again. Scott didn't need Devon for publicity. He needed her because she helped shape the way he saw women, movement, and rebellion. Karl Lagerfeld understood the same thing years earlier. When he placed Devon at the center of Chanel's couture show, he wasn't just casting her, he was sending a message. She represented where beauty was heading: unpredictable, modern, impossible to copy. The Chanel bride had always symbolized perfection, but with Devon, it became power. She made tradition look futuristic. In her, Lagerfeld found a face that could carry a legacy forward without repeating it. Then, just when it seemed like she was everywhere, she stepped away. No farewell interviews or headlines. And that became part of her myth. At the height of her fame, Devon Aoki disappeared. For 7 years, fashion went on without her, but her absence only made her presence stronger. In a world built on constant exposure, where models post every fitting in flight, Devon's silence became her loudest statement. The images she'd already created began circulating even more. Magazines called her a ghost who never stopped influencing. Designers referenced her past shoots as if they were sacred texts. The archive became untouchable. When Devon Aoki returned to the runway in 2016, it wasn't just another comeback, it was a full-circle shockwave. She walked Jeremy Scott's Moschino show in Los Angeles, the same designer who had cast her as a teenager years before. By then, she was a mother of 2, far removed from the constant churn of fashion weeks, yet she stepped out with the same calm defiance that once made her unforgettable. What followed wasn't a revival, it was a coronation. Time had only sharpened her influence. While most careers fade with distance, Devon's absence had turned her into something bigger than a model. By the 2020s, she had become a permanent part of fashion's language. Vogue featured her in its 2023 Karl Lagerfeld tribute issue, not as a nostalgic reference, but as someone who belonged alongside legends. Acne Studios chose her as the face of their Spring-Summer 2023 campaign, calling her the embodiment of Y2K cool reborn. She wasn't playing the past. She was proof that the past still moved. And at the Met Gala that same year, Devon arrived in a custom Jeremy Scott gown that combined elegance and edge, showing how Y2K energy could age with grace.
You guys look unreal.
Thank you so much, Chloe.
You have to tell us about these looks.
Well, I wanted to honor Karl, and I was doing black and white because I was thinking about his color palette is often restrained in black and white.
Yes.
And the last time Devon and Karl and I were together was after my last show in Paris when I originally lived there.
Yeah.
And she wore a winged leather piece, a bustier, in the show. And so I wanted to take a nod of mine with Karl, and then of course I have my shared muse, Devon Aoki, with Karl.
At 40 plus, she moved through an industry obsessed with youth and reminded it that originality doesn't expire. Devon never chased trends because she didn't need to. Her style was too specific, too personal to ever fall out of fashion. That's why her influence keeps growing instead of fading. Every photo, every walk, every campaign compounds her legacy a little more. But that lasting power raised a question the industry still can't stop asking. How does someone who broke every rule become the rule itself? Devon Aoki's influence didn't stop with nostalgia. It evolved into something even more untouchable. Beyond the runway, her legacy has seeped into places fashion never expected. The way today's streetwear blends softness with rebellion, or how luxury brands now borrow from subcultures instead of dictating to them that started with her. She showed how specificity travels. The low-rise jeans, cropped tanks, and candy-colored streetwear of the early 2000s didn't just define a trend. They became a language she spoke fluently. What you saw on camera was real. From the Rancid concert where she was discovered to the pink sports car in Too Fast, Too Furious, Devon's authenticity never needed styling. Her story had already become more than a career. Every comeback, every reinvention, every still image proved that real influence doesn't fade with time. It expands. Devon Aoki began as the girl who didn't measure up to what the industry expected. Decades later, she stands as one of the few models who outlasted every trend that tried to define her. The same world that once told her she wasn't tall enough now builds collections around her legacy. But Devon never chased relevance. She made it come to her. Every move she made carried the weight of someone who refused to shrink for anyone's comfort. Every photograph, every runway, every quiet moment of absence became proof that authenticity never goes out of style. And maybe that's the secret. You don't have to fit into the frame to become unforgettable, you just have to make the frame yours. Devon did exactly that. She didn't walk to impress, she walked to redefine. She didn't wait for permission, she became the standard. So the next time you see a Y2K revival, a pink car, or a new face-breaking fashion's rules, look closer. You'll see her shadow there, still moving, still shaping, still teaching the world that originality doesn't expire. If Devon Aoki's story still gives you chills, don't just scroll past it. Hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to remember where true rebellion begins, and subscribe for more untold legends that rewrote the rules of fame and beauty. Because here, we don't just remember icons, we study the revolutions they left behind.